Hi, folks. It's Larry Talks again. Here we are in 2016. It's January 22nd. And last time at Christmas, I promised that I would talk about Islam. But, well, the whole crisis is going on. And again, I choose the topics that I know something that you never hear on the media. Otherwise, why would I talk about it? If I'm just going to repeat what everybody else is saying, there's no point. So I'm going to tell you some things that you've never heard, and the reason I have the right to do this is, number one, I watch the news every day. Two, I taught world religions for 33 years, and I taught Islam for 33 years, and I met a lot of Muslims during that period, students. So, I mean, I taught 66 times, 2 semesters a year, in world religions. So here's what I learned. I mean, looking at the present crisis. Number one, if you want to get the true picture of what's going on, I don't understand how Americans be so incredibly stupid. The whole American policy is psychotic. And if you wanted the proof, just go see Lawrence of Arabia. I don't know what person hasn't seen that film. It tells it all. What is the truth? It's not about Islam. It's about the fact that Arabs and what do you call that whole culture? Because Arabs is only one part of it. You have Kurds, you have Farsi, Iranians. But they all, I don't think it's so true for Iran, because you can say Iran's a real nation, but the other countries are not. And if you see the movie Lawrence of Arabia, you get the fundamental issue. The fundamental issue is that Arabs' culture is made up not of Islam, but of tribes. And the tribes are very small. And just like in Mexico, you have gang heads. Well, all these tribal heads have been around for hundreds, thousands of years. Not thousands, because Islam isn't even about 1,000 years old. The religion is. But the culture is much older than that, and the culture is based on the idea that there's a tribal leader, and they fight about that. Take, for example, the Kurds. You hear in the media, oh, the Kurds, they're terrorists. Oh, the Kurds are saving us. They're fighting ISIS. Well, which is true? They're both true, because there's 100 different tribal groups of Kurds. There is no Kurd nation. And there is no Iraq nation, and there is no, the only nation you could possibly call a nation is maybe Egypt, maybe Iran, and maybe Turkey. But even Turkey, if you look at a map of the tribal groups, they're all divided up all over the place. So the real issue is about gangs. And what are we trying to do? We're trying to decide which gangs are good and which gangs are bad. I don't like to use the word gangs because it's not appropriate. But what they are is tribes. And these tribes, they don't know anything about nationalism, and they don't care anything about nationalism. And then we go in there and we're trying to say, in a few weeks we'll make you into a nation. We failed in 1914. And I have to tell you, when I was growing up, and again, giving the perspective of a 75-year-old, when I was 10 years old, 12 years old, I read history in grammar school. And what did they teach us? The white man's burden. What was the white man's burden? All of Africa. In my lifetime, Africa revolted and all the colonists were thrown out. That happened in my lifetime. It happened between 1953 and 1963. Well, it's still going on. But if you look at Africa, you can see that colonization won't work. And what's going on in the so-called Arab countries, or the Muslim, they're not Muslim countries, I guess they are in a sense, but these variety of cultural groups, is that they are trying to find their national identity and drive out people like us who've been trying to stop them from doing that for 100 years. And here we are here we're doing it again. Let's go in there and fix it. We can't fix it. We fouled it up in 1914 and we're fouling it up now. Now, generally people are saying, well, they have to solve it for themselves. Well, that's true. The first thing you've got to do is recognize that it's not about Islam. The Islamic part is the gangs that are trying to get bigger power are claiming a universal interest, and that is Islam, because that's all the Arabs are Muslims. Okay, that's a legit, that makes sense, but that's not what these wars and groups are about. And if you want to solve the problem or even understand the problem or know whose side you want to get on, you've got to look at the groups. And we don't want to do that because, well, first of all, it's impossible. I heard this on our media. I heard it on CNN, and I think this is so true because it harkens back to Lawrence of Arabia. That if you go there now, you'll find that just like the Kurds are in 100 different groups, and you can't. You get, who do you want to identify with? Who are the good guys? Good luck. There's probably a whole range. There's good, there's medium, there's just like in America, far right, far left, middle, broken up in many different groups. As far as the Islamic thing too is so ridiculous. I just have to make a kind of comparison here because we're almost done now. Well, we're 7 minutes in. I don't know if you know about this, but there was a group called the Dravidians. They were crazy Christians. They were claimed to be Christians, and they burned themselves up. The FBI attacked them, and they had some kind of cult leader, just like Jim Jones in Guyana. Same thing. 200 people committed suicide. I never heard a single Christian say, oh, we have to defend ourselves and say we're not like them. But you see, that's what we're doing to Islam. You got a bunch of gangs. It's like the guy in Mexico claiming that he did everything he did. You know, the guy they just captured, the head drug dealer, and saying, oh, he did it because he's a Christian. It's the Christianity's the problem in Mexico. No, it isn't. It's capitalism gone awry. And, you know, we don't realize how, this is almost a whole program in itself about how gay philosopher by the name of Foucault said, we always project our own history onto the past. Well, we're certainly projecting our own assumptions about democracy, capitalism. I'm going to end with this story because it applies to this whole thing. The way the Muslims see us. First of all, illiteracy is so high. Literacy in Muslim countries means memorizing the Quran in the original language. That's not literacy. It's not even Arabic. It's some other ancient tongue. They don't even understand what it means. It's like memorizing Latin. You know, that's that kind of comparison. Yeah, there was a similarity, but and then that's what literacy means. And that's what's gotten Islam. That's why the identity with Islam is that the people, the language, the only thing they know, you say they're educated, it means that they've memorized the Quran. And then you want to blame everything on the Quran. They don't even understand the Quran. The illiteracy in these countries, the high level of literacy is in Egypt and Turkey and Iran. But the other countries, their idea of literacy is memorizing the Quran in the original language and keeping women in their place. I mean, this is so tribal, so primitive. And then we want to go in and say, well, why aren't they? Well, we can change all this in one generation. We can't. And I'll just give it how crazy our approach to things is. I remember when the wall came down, about 9 years after that, I was in Greece and I was with a banker, a tour, and he told me he's in Boston and these Russians came and they wanted, he was going to teach them about capitalism. And he said to the Russian bankers, these are Russian bankers, what do you think is capitalism? What is your model of capitalism? What's your notion of capitalism? And he said, their answer was The Godfather. Now, does that make sense? And it is true. And you ask any Russian today, what is your model? What do you think capitalism is all about? Well, it's about gangsterism. And that's why you have all these, you hear of these Russians going around doing hacking and stuff. They think crime is that capitalism equals crime. Why did they think that? Because the Russian government gave them that as Tennessee Williams was one of the few artists who was allowed to have plays in Russia. So that they gave this view of America, that America, capitalism is gangsterism, was the model that the Russians wanted their people to have. And when the wall fell, that was their model. Now, how are we going to go and tell them? Now, I'm talking 8 years after the wall, this banker was telling me, he said, these guys, bankers from Russia, come trying to understand capitalism, don't have a clue. We have to realize that when we're dealing with other cultures like the Muslims, that we don't know what the hell we're talking about, and we need to understand their culture. That's the question number one. Not Islam, but Arabic culture, which you never hear on the media at all. Until we do that, we're just going to be doing, we're doing what, well, I predict what's going to happen in these countries is exactly what happened in Africa when I was growing up as a kid. They're going to throw out the colonists, and in 30 or 40 years, they'll have their own nation, their own concept, their own a true Islamic state, not one based on a bunch of gangsterism. That can't last. And I guess that's the last thing I want. I guess to end on a hopeful note that 30,000 people cannot run the Islamic world. I mean, why do we believe that? Because our media tells us that 30,000 people are running the whole world and they're going to take it over. Like, how crazy is that? That's not going to happen any more than the Dravidians took over the United States, or Jim Jones took over Guyana. They're these crazy cults, and they look like they're important, and they kill themselves, and they commit suicide. But that does not. It doesn't make it. That's not what it's about. And so, my whole point here is that the media isn't even dealing with the culture in the first place. Okay, that's all I have to say about all this. What are we going to do next time? I have no idea. I do have some ideas, but I wanted to talk about this because it's something I know about, and the media is not dealing with it. If you take into account what I've just said, I mean, who's dealing with this? Where do you ever hear any of this on the media? That what was going on in the Muslim world is a transformation that went on in Africa 50 years ago, and it's going to take 50 years for it to take place. And the last thing Europe and America should be doing is meddling in it. Of course, the refugees, that's a different problem. My email is Moorman, MOORMANL at AOL.com if you want to make any comments. And I don't know what I'm going to talk about next time. But this is like program number 8. And it's Larry Talks, and they're 10 minutes long. And we've had a lot of response in the sense that hits. A lot of people have been watching. So I want to thank you for watching. And I have gotten every once in a while, every program, 2 or 3 people will write me an email and say, well, I learned something. So I appreciate that. And that's all, folks. See you next time.